why does God allow suffering? It's a question I bet everyone has thought about at some point, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if you have a strong faith or if you're questioning everything. When life throws those curveballs, it's a thought that pops up.
Oh, absolutely. You might even find yourself, like, late at night, Googling it, trying to make sense of it all.
Exactly. And sometimes, when the pain just keeps coming and there are no easy answers, it can even shake your beliefs.
It's true. It can be a real struggle.
So if you've ever wrestled with this, you're definitely not alone. And actually, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
It's a big one, for sure. So this deep dive is based on a recent Bible study, a bi-weekly one, led by Michael Layden from Unchained Disciples. It's part of their Seeking Wholeness series.
Which is all about like our overall well-being.
Yeah, mental, emotional, spiritual, the whole package.
Yeah.
And in this particular session, they really went deep into this question of suffering. Head on.
And he started with a really powerful passage, didn't he? Habakkuk 1.23.
Oh, yeah, that one hits hard.
The prophet Habakkuk, he's crying out, "How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you don't listen? Or cry out to you, violence, but you don't save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are right there in front of me. There's strife and conflict abounds."
Wow, yeah, when you hear that, it's like it really resonates, especially today.
Totally. You see those news headlines, all those conflicts, all that pain, and then maybe in your own life, you're going through a tough breakup or you're dealing with some health issues, and it's like, where is God in all of this?
Right, where is he? So C.S. Lewis, he actually offered a pretty intense perspective on this. He said, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world.
So basically, suffering, even though we hate it, it might actually have a purpose, like a way to wake us up.
Exactly, like to cut through the noise and get our attention. And in this deep dive, we're going to explore some of these reasons for suffering that Michael talked about in the study, and we'll even look at ways that we might be able to, lessen suffering in our own lives and in the world around us.
You know what I was thinking about the other day is like, even small, everyday frustrations can kind of feel like suffering in a way.
Oh, tell me about it.
So I had this water leak at my place, and I'm not talking about a little drip. I mean, like actual water trickling down from the ceiling light fixture. Total panic, right? So I've got plumbers coming in and out, estimates that are giving my bank account a heart attack. And then after what felt like an eternity, the insurance company finally tells me
Don't leave me hanging.
that none of it is covered.
Oh no, are you serious?
Seriously. And even though it's a relatively small thing in the grand scheme of things, it still makes you want to throw your hands up and be like, why me?
Totally.
Yeah.
I get it. But you're right, it's like a mini version of that bigger question, isn't it?
Yeah. And of course, many people face much bigger challenges. Serious illnesses, grief, financial struggles, broken relationships. Those are the times when that question, why is there suffering, just weighs so heavy.
Absolutely. And we're not going to pretend to have all the answers or easy solutions. There often aren't any.
No, for sure not. But what we want to do is dive into the different perspectives that Michael shared in his Bible study, looking at suffering and evil, and see if there are any practical ways we can, maybe reduce suffering in our lives and for others.
Makes sense. So where do we even start with something this big?
Well, I think Michael's teaching actually gives us a pretty good roadmap. He starts by talking about what he calls traits of wholeness.
Traits of wholeness. Okay, I'm intrigued.
So Unchained Disciples, through their Seeking Wholeness series, they've spent like 5 years exploring this idea. And it's basically about developing these different parts of ourselves.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like inner peace, resilience, a strong faith, things that can really change how we experience and deal with suffering.
That makes sense. So it's like building up our inner strength to face those tough times.
Exactly. And while it's a huge topic on its own, I mean, they've looked at spiritual health, mental health, emotional health, freedom from oppression, and those fruits of the spirit like joy, peace, patience, self-control. I think it provides some really crucial context for what we're talking about today.
Got it. So building at those traits of wholeness is like laying the foundation for handling suffering better.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so then we can get into what suffering actually is. And this might sound strange, but we're going to look at this idea that suffering isn't always a bad thing.
Okay, now that is a bit of a head scratcher. How can suffering not be bad?
Well, we'll get to that. But first, we need to tackle the big question. Why do we suffer in the first place? Michael gave several reasons for this, and some are a bit easier to grasp than others.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the first one Michael brought up is the devil.
Okay, so we're going straight to the supernatural.
Yeah. You know, the Bible talks about him as this adversary, this enemy who's actively working against us.
Right, like in 1 Peter 5:89, it says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." But basically, we need to be on guard.
Exactly. And then there's James 4.7. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. It's like we have this power to resist him.
And then Ephesians 6:18 talks about putting on the armor of God, like a spiritual shield against his attacks.
So according to this perspective, one reason why we suffer is because of this negative spiritual force that's constantly trying to tempt us, threaten us, and deceive us.
And if we tie this back to that seeking wholeness idea, it's like a reminder that suffering isn't always just physical or emotional, right? There's a spiritual dimension too.
Totally. And that means we need to fight back with spiritual tools. Faith, prayer, staying alert.
It adds a whole other layer to understanding why bad things happen, doesn't it?
It does. Okay, now for the second reason. Living in a fallen world.
Ah, yes, the classic, it's all Adam and Eve's fault.
Well, not exactly. But Romans 5.1 does say that sin entered the world through one man and death through sin, and that's how death came to all people because all have sinned.
Right, so because of that first sin, the world became broken.
Exactly. And that brokenness leads to people doing bad things, making bad choices, and those choices have ripple effects, causing suffering for everyone.
And I guess God hasn't just wiped the slate clean, so to speak, and removed all those consequences.
Not yet, no. But Michael did talk about how God has a plan to ultimately deal with all this evil. It's just that, for now, we live in a world where the effects of sin are real and they cause suffering.
It's like we're still dealing with the fallout.
Yeah, kind of. Okay, so the third reason Michael gave is our own choices, our free will.
Oh boy, that one can be a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
It can, but in Deuteronomy 30.1, it says, "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live." It's like God saying, look, you have the power to choose.
And sometimes we choose poorly.
We do, and that can lead to suffering not just for ourselves, but for others too.
So what's the solution there? How do we avoid making those bad choices?
Michael talked about the importance of obeying God's principles, seeking wisdom, especially in the book of Proverbs, and praying for guidance.
It's like taking responsibility for our actions.
Exactly, and realizing that our choices have consequences.
Okay, what else did Michael cover?
Well, he also talked about the danger of chasing worldly goals instead of focusing on our relationship with God.
So like putting material possessions and success before our faith.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And James 4.4 is really clear about this. "You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God."
Ouch, that's pretty strong language.
It is, but it shows how seriously God takes this. When we prioritize worldly things over him, it can lead to a different kind of suffering, like a feeling of emptiness or dissatisfaction.
So we might achieve all those worldly goals, but still end up feeling unfulfilled.
Exactly. And the answer, according to Michael, is pretty straightforward. Seek God's kingdom first.
Which makes sense if we think about that whole seeking wholeness thing. Real well-being comes from aligning ourselves with God, not with worldly pursuits.
Absolutely. Now, this next one is really interesting. Michael talked about how our mindset and how we perceive things can actually change how we experience suffering.
Okay, now explain that one to me. Because if I'm going through something painful, how can my thoughts change that?
Well, think about James 1.23. It says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance."
So even though it's hard, we should try to find joy in those difficult times.
Exactly, because they can actually make our faith stronger. And then Michael talked about this rat experiment.
A rat experiment. Okay, I'm all ears.
So basically, they had these rats swimming in water, and the ones who thought they could escape kept swimming for much longer than the ones who didn't have that hope.
Wow, that's amazing. So just having hope can make a huge difference in how long we can endure suffering.
It seems that way. And it highlights how our internal state, our mindset, plays a huge role in how we deal with external hardships.
That's actually really empowering. It means we have some control over how we react to suffering.
We do. Now, the last reason Michael gave is a bit more complicated, and it might be the hardest one to accept. He talked about the possibility that God might allow suffering or even cause it for a specific purpose.
Okay, I knew we'd get to this one. This is the one that always makes me wonder, How could a loving God cause us pain?
I know, it's tough. But Michael talked about several reasons why this might happen. Like Romans 5:3-5 talks about how suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance builds character, and character leads to hope.
So it's like suffering can refine us, make us stronger.
Yeah, like a blacksmith forging a sword in the fire.
Yeah.
And then there's that image of pruning from John 15:1-2. God is the vine dresser, and he prunes the branches that bear fruit so they can bear even more.
So it's like he's cutting away the dead weight so we can flourish.
Exactly. And 1 Peter 1:6-7 compares the testing of our faith to the refining of gold. It's a process that makes it purer.
Okay, those are helpful images, but still, it's hard to wrap your head around sometimes.
It is. And then Michael talked about the wilderness theme in the Bible. You know, those periods of 40 days or 40 years where people face trials and testing.
Like Jesus in the desert.
Yes. And Moses leading the Israelites through the wilderness for 40 years.
It's like a time of preparation, of transition.
Exactly. So maybe those tough times, those wilderness experiences are part of a bigger plan.
A plan for growth and ultimately for something better.
Possibly. Now, I know all this talk about suffering can feel heavy, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about what God does to help us through it.
Okay, yes, please. We need some good news now.
Well, there's that famous verse, Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
I love that verse. It's so comforting.
It is. And Michael even mentioned another interpretation by a scholar named N.T. Wright.
Oh, what does he say?
Well, he suggests that maybe it's not that God controls every single event and makes it good, but rather that he invites us to work with him to bring good out of every situation.
So it's like a partnership.
Yeah, I like that idea. But either way, the main point is that God wants good things for us.
And he wants us to be part of bringing good into the world too. In Isaiah 58:10, it says, "If you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday."
So we're called to help those who are suffering, to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
And throughout history, the church has always been at the forefront of that, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. From massive organizations like the Catholic Church and their hospitals to small local church groups doing outreach in their communities.
It's inspiring to see. And then there's 2 Corinthians 1:3-4, which says, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God."
So God comforts us so that we can then comfort others.
It's like a beautiful cycle of compassion.
It is, and ultimately Michael's teaching points to the cross, to Jesus' death, as the ultimate answer to suffering.
Because he took on all the suffering of the world.
Exactly. Romans 8:18 says, "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." So even though we go through tough times here, it's nothing compared to the glory that awaits us.
That's the hope that keeps us going.
It is. And you know, it's like that analogy of going through a valley. The tough part is that you're in it, but the good news is you're going through it. It's not your final destination.
I like that. It gives you perspective.
And Michael shared another great image, the one about the mother eagle pushing her eaglets out of the nest.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one. It seems so cruel at first.
It does, but she's actually doing it to teach them to fly, to prepare them for something amazing.
So maybe those challenges, those times when we get pushed out of our comfort zone, are actually God's way of preparing us for something bigger.
It's possible. And just like those rats in the experiment, having hope is crucial for getting through the tough times.
Hope gives us the strength to keep swimming. So as you've been listening to this deep dive, what has resonated with you the most? What are your takeaways?
Yeah, which of these perspectives on suffering connects with your own experiences? And how might this understanding, from the Bible and from what we've talked about, change how you face challenges in the future?
It's a question worth pondering. And we encourage you to go back to those Bible passages we mentioned, read them for yourself, and keep exploring this question in your own life.
Because it's a question that deserves our attention. And even though there might not be easy answers, searching for those answers can lead us to a deeper understanding of God, ourselves, and the world around us.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe in that search, we'll even find some healing and hope along the way.